6 years you had this idea, right?
Yes.
It's been quite a long time coming.
I know. It went through various rewrites, and then there was other directors attached to do it, and I would go off and do other films, and then I would come back to it, and it went through all these different phases. But now in hindsight, I realise it was all meant to be. I'm assigning meaning to it because if it hadn't taken so long to get made, I wouldn't have directed it.
But you said you got the idea from sort of like watching a quadriplegic one day. Is that true?
No, it was just an idea I had. It just popped into my head. It wasn't like I was reading a newspaper article or I saw someone in real life. Most of my movie ideas just happen at random times. Like I'll be in the shower and be like, yeah, that's not a bad idea. And I remember I was sitting in my backyard and I just had this image pop into my head of a quadriplegic person who had a computer controlling their body for them. And I started with that idea and kind of built the movie around that image.
So obviously it's the 6 years, and if it's gone through, it was what, Greg McLean, the Spearig brothers.
Greg McLean and Spearigs were attached to it.
And so it must have added their own bit into it. Did you change that, or did you bring it back out? Or?
They definitely had ideas and thoughts. Nothing that was radically different from what I had written, but I definitely worked with them on drafts. And then when it came back over to me and I was going to direct it, I kind of wrote another couple of drafts that kind of skewed it closer to where I wanted to see it. So it definitely had this weird little life that went on and on.
So I'm assuming the lead guy, Trey, is he you? He's so not into sort of like technology. Is that you?
Kind of, yeah. I'm definitely someone that doesn't get along with technology. I'll use it for the things that I need it for, but they're always pretty basic. I'm not one of those early adopters. You know those people who are queuing up outside the Apple store at 6 a.m. the day before it? That's the opposite of me. But I'm not quite the Luddite that refuses to even own a phone. There's not many people left like that in the world, although my brother is pretty much one of those people. But I am very cynical and suspicious of the way we use technology, in particular social media. I think it's kind of toxic what it's doing to us, and it's changing us.
Marshal Logan Green, he's great, but I did have to sort of often blink every now and again and think, am I watching Tom Hardy? You must have had this a million times, people saying that to you.
I've seen it online, people saying he looks like Tom Hardy, yeah. Yeah, I guess it's one
of those... It must irritate
things...
him like hell, I'm sure.
I don't know. I guess it's one of those things where you'll never know. I'll never know if it irritates him unless I ask him, because no one around him is saying that. So he, when we were on the set of the film, nobody was saying to him like, hey, you know who you look like?
The whole fights, the way you do that, I know you try to do as much, physically as possible. That's one of the reasons you chose him, because he could actually do that believably?
No, I didn't know what he could do. I chose him because he was a great actor. I had no idea if he was good physically in terms of those fight scenes. I just kind of took a gamble, and I was so lucky that he was so physically capable. Like the stunt guy who did this movie, Chris Anderson, he's a real legend in Australia and a veteran of the stunt world. And he said that Logan was one of the best actors he's ever worked with in terms of his coordination. A lot of actors, they're great actors, but you put a sword in their hand and they're like, ah! And so he said Logan was probably the most accomplished in terms of his athleticism.
And it hews to the Blumhouse sort of like business model, Reed. It was made for a budget. And I have to tell you now, I thought you stretched that budget brilliantly. I thought it looked so wonderful. It looked 10 times the cost. It really did.
That's what we were trying to do. We were trying to make it feel bigger than it was. And it's all down to the crew and the technicians and the artists. The production designer, Felicity Abbott, she was amazing. And she had a real ingenuity about the way she went about things. She didn't take things at face value. If she looked at a piece of paper that said this set was going to cost $200,000, she would go back to the drawing board and figure out a way to do it for $50,000. I think in Australia in particular, there's a really good spirit of like, let's just get this done. And maybe in Hollywood or Los Angeles, the opposite spirit of like, unless I have the money, I can't do this. So I think it was really to our benefit to shoot the film in Australia for that reason. I don't think we could have pulled that film off in LA.
It is your tribute to Verhoeven, isn't it? It's like everything 80s. I mean,
it's
there. There's a lot there that people will sort of pick up on.
It's those movies. It's not a tribute to Verhoeven particularly, although I do love his movies. I think the film was definitely inspired by those 80s sci-fi movies that I grew up with, the sort of zenith of practical effects. You know, whether it's The Thing or The Fly or Scanners or RoboCop or The Terminator, it's those gritty, violent, practical effects-driven sci-fi movies that there was something so tactile and grimy about them. And I feel like a lot of sci-fi today is getting very shiny, very clean and nice. And I wanted to go back to the dirt.
I know exactly the bits people are going to raise the roof on tonight. I mean, I know, and you really go for it, because there's a moment where I thought, well, hang on a minute, this looks a bit safe, but then of course it all kicks in, and I thought, it's back. So you really did. You have any resistance to that at all, about the real over the top?
No. I wanted to do that. I wanted to do something that was like really visceral and kind of a gut punch movie. You know, when you don't have much money, you have to shout to be heard. You know, if you don't have movie stars whose faces you can slap on the poster, or you don't have hundreds of millions of dollars to spend, you have to get the audience's attention somehow. And so I wanted to make a movie in the spirit of those 80s sci-fi films we mentioned that was kind of a gut punch. You know, like something you watched that was like, shit, did I just watch that? It's that same feeling you had the first time you saw RoboCop. And it was just like, it was like funny and fun, but also really visceral and violent. And, it stays with you.